Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prof series. In this episode, we'll cover Dr. Elizabeth Lee. She's a recently retired researcher in corn breeding within the University of Guelph. Prior to her retirement, she specialized in corn genetics and taught a great many courses within the University of Guelph. In this episode, we'll be talking about a paper by Dr. Elizabeth Lee called Yield Potential, Yield Stability, and Stress Tolerance in Maize. Let's get started. In the last 60 years, yield has increased within corn. In the 30s, the yield maxed out around 1 megagram per hectare, and over time it increased to about 7 megagrams per hectare in the 1990s. Based on current evidence, the improving yield is a result of breeding towards greater response to management, or more specifically, breeding corn lines that are adapted to a high input, high management environment. The yield potential of a cultivar, or hybrid, is defined as the ability for the hybrid to yield X amount of grain under non-limiting conditions within an environment of which the cultivar or hybrid is adapted. Another aspect that improved yield was the ability for these plants to adapt higher density planting system. From the 30s to the 90s, the amount of plants per meter square went from 1.0 to 7.9 plants per square, and the plants themselves were able to yield quite well. This played a role in increasing yield as well. Still, another factor that played a role in increasing yields was the switching from open pollinated lines to F1 hybrids. The F1 hybrid on average yields 15% higher than the best open pollinated varieties, and the newer F1 hybrids yield 60% more than the early F1 hybrids from the 30s, even though the absolute heterosis has remained stable from year to year. A third factor within yield improvement has been the improvement of stress tolerance. This has led to increased yield stability. These improved stress tolerance aspects are to create stable yield so that it doesn't go up but doesn't go down that much either. If a cultivar is said to produce 170 bushels per acre, with heavy amounts of stability genes within it, it will not deviate very much from that 170 bushels per acre under normal management. The primary objective of this paper is to examine the interrelationship between yield potential, stress tolerance, and yield stability in maize, or as we call it, corn. This is done both through a study of various reports regarding yield potential, yield stability, and stress tolerance, as well as an analysis of 12 corn F1 hybrids across multiple environments, the first 5 being evaluated amongst 64 environments, and the next 4 being evaluated amongst 130 environments, the Novaris hybrid being evaluated amongst 74 environments, and the Pioneer hybrid being evaluated amongst 239 environments. The maturity date for each hybrid became the determining factor for how many environments they are tested in. Amongst the reports, an association of corn growers within Michigan reported, on average, a yield of 19.7 megagrams per hectare in the early 1970s, with similar rates in other parts of North America. This increased in the year 2000, with an average yield of 67 megagrams per hectare between 1980 and the year 2000. All varieties since the 1990s have been found to be far more tolerant of colder nights than those prior to the 1950s, and various genotypes have been showing up, creating the concept of a workhorse and racehorse variety. These workhorses are, generally speaking, far more resistant to different stresses, but oftentimes comes with a lower yield. Racehorse cultivars are varieties that are known for having high yield if all conditions are perfect, but the yields crash very hard when they're not perfect. Indeed, one researcher, Dr. Calavari, found that many plant breeders feel that stress resistance is negatively correlated with high yield. Now on to the results of the analysis. Based on this analysis, the racehorse type hybrids were found to be greater in yield than the trial mean yield, represented by the control variety Wysen 50AW, and on average the racehorse varieties yielded higher than the average mean. However, one workhorse variety yielded more than the yield average, and one racehorse variety did not yield higher than the average. The results of this analysis are similar to the work of Dr. Calavari and Dr. Jensen. Basically, those that exhibit higher yields oftentimes have lower stress tolerance, and vice versa. But free hybrids were also found to have high stress tolerance levels, even though they could be considered racehorse type hybrids with high yields, but only in very specific environments. It is therefore plausible that the interaction of the environment does alter the behavior of different varieties on whether or not they're a racehorse or a workhorse. And in certain instances, there's hybrids that have both high stress tolerance and high yield across multiple environments. This indicates that the goal of increasing stress tolerance and the goal of increasing high yield is not mutually exclusive. Indeed, it is plausible that the gap between racehorse and workhorse hybrids in terms of their traits could be closed before the end of the century. And that about covers everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it and think you can donate, you can do so at Buy Me a Coffee, link in the description below. Thank you for watching.